It's August, and if you're the Kremlin, that's the worst word in the calendar, not because of the heat, because of the history. For over 3 decades, August has been the month Russia's government quietly braces for disaster, and it keeps happening. Let's go back to where the curse starts. August 1991. Hardline communist officials lock the Soviet president in his holiday house and try to seize control in Moscow. It should work. It doesn't. Within 3 days, the coup collapses, and it drags the entire Soviet Union down with it. 1 August, one empire, gone. You'd think that would be enough chaos for 1 month forever. It was not. Fast forward to August 1998. Russia's economy is quietly rotting from the inside. Then, in the space of a single week, the government defaults on its debt and lets the currency collapse. Savings evaporate overnight. This is the moment a lot of foreign journalists in Moscow are on holiday. The ones who aren't get the story of their careers. 1 trillion rubles of value, gone while most of the country was at the beach. So naturally, the very next August, Russia decides to try something different, a regime change of its own. August 1999. An unpopular, ailing president needs a successor. He picks an obscure ex-KGB officer nobody's heard of and makes him prime minister. Weeks later, a wave of deadly bombings hits apartment blocks, and a region called Dagestan gets hit by an unexplained armed incursion. The new guy responds hard. Ratings skyrocket. A political nobody becomes the most powerful man in the country. Inside 1 August. You'd think a guy who got that lucky in August would want to avoid the month for the rest of his life. Instead, August just keeps finding him. August 2000. Barely a year into the job, a state-of-the-art nuclear submarine sinks in the Barents Sea with the entire crew trapped inside. The government's response is slow, secretive, and badly coordinated. Foreign rescue offers get turned down for days. By the time anyone reacts properly, it's too late. The takeaway for the whole country: this leadership is tough on television and dangerously stiff in a real crisis. 8 August later, that same stiffness turns into something else entirely. August 2008. Tanks roll into a neighboring country over a breakaway region. It's short, it's brutal, and, crucially, nobody outside the region does much to stop it. The world shrugs, and that shrug becomes a lesson the Kremlin never forgets. August is when you can get away with it. That lesson gets applied on a much bigger scale, 14 years later, in a war that still hasn't ended. And in between all of that, more Augusts. More disasters. Wildfires so bad they choke Moscow in smoke. Floods that wash away whole towns. Plane crashes. Explosions at munitions depots. It's not superstition exactly. It's just that a government running on secrecy, control, and denial tends to have its cracks show in the same season every single time. So here's the actual question. Why August, specifically? Officials are on vacation. Decision-making slows down. Whatever's been quietly breaking all year, economically, militarily, politically, finally has nobody minding it. Add heat, dry conditions, and a system that punishes anyone for delivering bad news early. And August becomes the month where problems stop being hideable. Which brings us to right now, this August, and it might be the worst one yet. For years, the war machine ran on one simple trick: sell oil, fund the war, keep the home front comfortable enough that nobody asks questions. That trick is breaking. Long-range drone strikes have spent the past year hammering Russia's oil refineries. Hundreds of hits, knocking out a huge share of the country's total refining capacity. The result isn't abstract. It's queues at gas stations. It's regions outside Moscow running short on fuel while the capital gets priority, because the capital is where coups happen. And that resentment matters more than it sounds. A system built on the promise that life stays normal, that today looks like yesterday and tomorrow looks like today, cannot survive people noticing that the pumps are empty. Meanwhile, the economy that was supposed to be sanctions-proof is shrinking. Growth has gone negative. The budget deficit has already blown past what was planned for the entire year in the first 3 months alone. The reserve fund the government built to cushion exactly this kind of shock has lost more than half its value since the war started. On the battlefield, the picture is just as grim for the Kremlin. Advances that used to be measured in kilometers are now measured in meters a day, among the slowest rates of any war fought in the last 100 years. Casualties are enormous. Recruitment is struggling to keep pace with losses, which is exactly why the government has quietly started preparing a new, quieter way to conscript people. Electronic draft notices, sent without warning, with the border closed behind anyone who gets one. So add it up: fuel shortages, a shrinking economy, a war grinding forward at a crawl, a political system that has spent 26 years selling stability as its one unbreakable promise, now visibly unable to deliver it. None of that guarantees collapse. Autocracies are built to absorb pain that would sink an ordinary government 10 times over. Analysts who track this closely are pretty consistent on one point: the system is genuinely more resilient than it looks from the outside, and the people at the top are too tied to the man in charge to move against him easily. But resilient isn't the same as safe, and August has a track record of finding exactly the cracks a system spent all year pretending weren't there. That's the pattern. 3 decades running, a coup that ends an empire, a default that wipes out savings, a staged crisis that launches a new leader, a submarine disaster that exposes his reflexes, a war that teaches him he can get away with it, and now, a fuel crisis, a shrinking economy, and a war he can't finish, all landing in the same 31 days. Again, every year, people in Russia brace for August the way other countries brace for hurricane season, not because it's guaranteed to be bad, because it usually is. And every year, the question is the same: what breaks this time? This August, the Kremlin has more candidates than ever to choose from, and for the first time in a long time, less room left to absorb whichever one wins. History doesn't repeat on a schedule, but in Russia, August has never needed much of an invitation.